A special welcome today on to my next blog piece for Rare. And today we welcome Xavier Paoli from FarNext. He's the Chief Operating Officer. FarNext is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company developing novel therapeutics for orphan and common neurodegenerative diseases that currently lack curative and or disease modifying treatments. So welcome to Rare, Xavier. It's really nice to have you here today for this discussion.
Thank you.
I just thought we could start off with, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and about your journey to where you are now.
Okay, so very nice meeting you, Laura. So basically, my background, I am a scientist by training in immunology and genetics, and I did some basic research on HIV at the very beginning of my career in France, in Paris, and quickly I thought it was not maybe the good role for me, and I moved to business school, which was a completely new world for me compared to the research world. And basically, I started my career in a consultancy company, a small one, where I worked for biotech and pharma companies. And then I moved to biotech and pharma companies, mainly in marketing and sales role. I have always been involved in launching new drugs for rare diseases where there is a strong unmet medical need, which is a real driver for me. And 7.5 years ago, I had the occasions to join FarNext, which was a pure R&D company at that time, more R than an R&D company. And my task was to bring the I would say the commercial and business mindset into the company and make sure we understand the disease of our lead assets, and in particular build the relationship with the patient advocacy group, which has been very important, and also simply understand the market for future commercialization.
Yeah, okay. So how did you make that move into the rare disease space? And how did you end up then at FarNext?
Actually, when I was a consultant at the beginning of my career, I worked for a company called Alexion Pharmaceuticals. That is a very well-known company in the rare disease space that has just been acquired by AstraZeneca. And it was my first experience in the industry. And as you know, the Soliris at the beginning was indicated in PNH, which is a real ultra orphan disease. And it was my first experience in the industry. And I think it was the time where I really liked working in the rare disease space. For the reason I gave just before, is that I really have the impression that I can make an impact for patients that are in a strong unmet medical need. And for these patients, there is no therapeutic solution. So it's a very strong motivator for me to work in these therapeutic areas of rare diseases, whether it's autoimmune or neurological. For me, there are similarities in the rare disease space, no matter what therapeutic area you're talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so you clearly have a lot of experience within the commercial strategy development. How do you think that differs in the rare disease space?
In the rare disease space, I would say that the way it's different is that the scientific component is super important. When we speak about commercialization and marketing in the pharmaceutical industry, if you are talking about an OTC drug where the color or the brand or the logo of the drug is super important, in rare disease, it's completely different. What is really important is what we call medical marketing, where the scientific component and the medical components of what you need to do is super important. And what you need to bring to the market and in terms of services to the community is completely different. You need to have a very strong relationship with patient advocacy groups, which are usually very strong in rare diseases, where you have patients that are really expert of their disease. You need to develop very strong relationship with the key opinion leaders. And also the market access is quite challenging in rare disease because the price of the drug is higher than in other therapeutic areas or for more mass market or common diseases. And to that respect, you need to develop specific tool and specific thinking or specific action plan that are very specific. So for instance, if I talk more specifically about market access or even regulators, it's a typical area where you need to meet with regulators or you need to meet with payers or HTA bodies well in advance so that they understand the disease and they understand the solutions that you will bring, because frequently rare disease means that the knowledge of regulators, HTA bodies, and even sometimes physicians is relatively low on the disease. Mm-hmm. So you need to educate the community on the disease and what your drug will bring. So for instance, in the US, there are initiatives that you can do with patient advocacy group that are called PFDD meeting, which is meetings where the patient's advocacy group invites FDA officials to educate them on the disease and so that they understand what are the challenges in this disease. Yeah. So that's really the main difference. And I guess that this is particularly true nowadays that gene therapies are coming on the market more frequently, I would say, and there's going to be more gene therapies in the future, in particular for rare diseases, because with the genomic and the genetic progress that we do nowadays, we understand more and more the disease to the very specific genetic mutation. So you can bring gene therapy solutions, and so gene therapy solutions are very expensive. So everything is as I said, you need to meet with payers in advance, and sometimes you need to find innovative solutions that are not the classical one you can have with common diseases.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I feel like it's every day in the news. I see a new company who's developing the gene therapy, is opening a new site to develop gene therapy, which is really exciting, especially for patients. So how has the development of the strategic plans then changed or evolved in the last 2 years, post-COVID?
Post-COVID, I would say that we have to get used to work remotely for obvious reasons. So far at FarNext, with our lead drug asset PXT3003, which is in development for Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease type 1A, it's a rare inherited neuropathy. We've been quite lucky, frankly speaking. We are just in the middle of enrolling the patients. So far, we have not experienced any delays because of the COVID-19 pandemics. That being said, there are things that you cannot do that we used to do, like investigator meeting with the investigator center that you used to do face-to-face that you have to do remotely. And it's true in in many other activities, like when we do disease awareness campaign with patient advocacy group, it's very much focused on digital initiatives. That was not necessarily the case before, or even, I mean, in terms of scientific communication during congresses, now most of the congresses are virtual. Just a good example is JP Morgan in January that was supposed to be live in San Francisco, and they just announced that it turns to be virtual. So yeah, I mean, I guess we have to get used to use new tools. And I think that when the COVID situation will be solved, and I hope it's going to be soon, we will not go back to the exact way we were used to working before. We will much more rely on digital tools and work remotely.
Yeah. With that being said, what do you think the future holds for commercialization across pharmaceutical biotech companies within orphan therapies?
I think that the most important strategic moves that you can see more and more is the engagement of patients' advocacy groups. They are involved in the design of the trials. They are involved in many committees with regulators or even HTA bodies and payers. And I think it's an excellent move, because in the end, you need to bring solutions to patients. So if you don't understand their needs, and if you don't understand their symptoms and what they feel, you are not in the right way. So, and you can also see that in the endpoints that are used in clinical trials in rare diseases. As an example, in our case, the primary endpoint is called the ONLS scale, and the ONLS scale measures the disability of the motor disability of patients. And this is a series of questions where you ask the ability of the patients to do things on their daily life, like turning a key in a lock, this type of things. And I see it really changing, that regulators, they give an importance in the endpoints on things that really matters in terms of symptoms and quality of life to patients, and not only restricting endpoints to biological parameters or electrophysiological parameters, for instance, in the case of CMT. And I think this is something that is really changing.
Yeah.
For the good.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really interesting. And how do you think FarNext is taken into consideration everything that you've said in terms of future plans? And then wider, what do you think that companies should be thinking about when they're commercializing new portfolios?
For instance, at FarNext, what we've done, if I had to speak about one digital initiatives, is we knew that there were very few data on the disease and the way patients are managing their disease on a daily life. So what we've done is, instead of doing a classical observational study that would only serve the interests of the company, is we said, why don't we do a digital lifestyle survey with a digital app that you can download on your iPhone or your iPad or your tablets, and where the patients can describe very precisely on a daily basis or on a monthly basis how it is to live with CMT1A. And the enormous interest of doing that is that you collect data on the disease, so you serve the entire community, including the company that needs this data when you go and discuss with regulators and HTA bodies. But on the other hand, when you do that, you help the patients to manage his disease, in a sense that when you are in front of your physicians and when you have a rare disease and when you see your physicians every year, for instance, like it's often the case in CMT, it's not that easy to give a summary to your physician of what happened during the last years. And having a digital tool where you have a kind of a diary of what happened to you during the last year is super helpful for patients to in their relation with physicians. So it's just an example where you have a win-win project that helps the patient in their everyday life, but that will also support the commercialization of the drug.
Absolutely, that's great to hear. I've not heard of that before. No, that sounds really interesting. Well, that was kind of all the questions that I had for you. Thank you a lot for taking the time to feature on Rare. The blog is aimed at highlighting all of the great work that's going on across the space, across Europe, FarNext included. So I'll be keeping an eye out for FarNext in the news. So once again, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you, Laura. Very nice meeting you.
You too.